strong at. I think I'm just trying to think who the first person that we hired. Actually, the first person that we hired was a kid. And we got a kid. We decided, colleague and I, that we needed some administrative support, and we hired a kid. And it's the best thing we ever did, because we kept on hiring kids ever after. Because when you get a kid, especially if they haven't been to university, and they haven't got ideas about their station, they do actually do the work. And also, they're thinking young, because culture changes over the years. And 35 years ago when we started, it's completely different. But I still feel that I'm in tune with what I'm thinking, because we have so many kids. So I think it doesn't matter what you get the kids to do, but just hire some kids. That's the first thing there. In terms of fundraising, don't ask me, I'm the worst person to ask on this at all. I think our fundraising has been absolutely appalling until fairly recently. And again, it's one of those things where we were focused on ideas and doing stuff and so on, and we didn't put enough attention into where the money might be coming from to fund those things. And we were lucky that we got a few good friends. And I think that what you need to do is you need to find a few good friends. There's nothing creative about this, really. You need to find a few friends and have a long-term relationship with them. You can't simply go out and say, please give us money, we want to do something, and then forget somebody for a year and then go back to them in a year's time and say, well, please give us some more money, when they have to go from in between. You have to make those people partners in your organisation. People come to you and you go to fundraisers, you have to say, we don't want money, we don't want you to give us a check and then disappear. We want you to actually be our partner in this organisation. I think that works in every country, rich and poor.
Anything to add, Parth?
First people I hired were my parents, without having to pay them. The person that I hired whom I did pay was a research associate. As I said earlier, that finding things that we could talk about, doing research on those issues was very important to be able to get off the ground, to be able to show people that they will be able to talk about something new that they have not thought about or they have not yet discovered. And so having a first research associate was very important for us to get established. In terms of fundraising, I guess you just have to have a lot of your countrymen living in the US.
That's actually a very good point. I know one of the small Central Eastern European countries raises most of its money from. Just the other day, I was Googling around and found an entry in Wikipedia that said that 1.25 Guatemalan Americans living in southern Florida and southern California. Larry, you wanted to go?
I did, but I wanted to raise a point on this particular issue because I really do sympathize with so many people. This audience having been to conferences around the world, seeing so many bright people struggling to keep these organizations going. If there's one idea that the free market groups in the United States should be exporting to the rest of the world, it's the idea of philanthropy. It really is American exceptionalism. It preceded the tax deduction. I mean, de Tocqueville found it here in the 19th century. We have this civil society that naturally evolved, where people take things into their own hands. People who do want to make a difference and want to do something. And I think the problem is in many of the less developed countries, it's winner takes all kind of system. So you either win the election or you go to jail. There's no civil society in the middle, and there's nobody committed to creating that independent space where people can critique and think. And actually, it's incumbent on the Americans, rather. There's only so much money you can get from the United States. You've got to find the Bill Gateses or the Richard Scapes of your countries. One person who's committed to making a change, but in a kind of independent, non-partisan, non-political way, and build out from there. But that's an important idea to embed in those societies because I find it absent as I go around the world. Now, that's a shame because it really puts you folks at a disadvantage.
Okay, the next question is for Parth and Larry, and I think maybe we steer away from the specific example given, and just into generalities, Martin Larry, working in the policy field often tempts an organisation to get involved in politics. Recently, the Heritage Foundation set up Heritage Action to do exactly that, with, to put it delicately, mixed results. How close should a think tank get to direct political action?
To direct political action, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. I mean, what I mean by that is you should be your door should be open to any person running for office or who's in office who's interested in hearing ideas. And you should work with their policy people if they need help in terms of crafting legislations. But if it's, somebody on the panel mentioned, to identify yourself with one particular party or one politician, in the end, it's self-defeating. It undermines your credibility. You immediately become taxed. So I think it's possible to work and cooperate with organizations that have more political focus, but I think a think tank should be about idea generation, and then, as Arthur said, finding ways to transmit and persuade as best you can. But stay behind the line, I would suggest.
Awesome.
We're all searching for relevance all the time. If we're not relevant, we die. And that's hugely important, because the whole idea of being accessible, being irresistible in our messages, being unavoidable in the influence that we have means that we have to be relevant. And relevance takes on all sorts of temptations to it. One of the things when I talk about products really briefly is that you can be game persuasion or power or propaganda, and you see all of these across the think tank sphere. One thing to keep in mind, those of you who are not working in or not conversant in the American tax code, which I recommend that nobody be conversant with the American tax code, is that their think tanks, as we understand them, as we represent them here, are 501c3 public charities, or organizations dedicated to research and education, and they're public charitable purposes. That's not how our friends at Heritage set up their political arm, which is a 501c4 advocacy organization. So technically, we're not talking about a think tank becoming a political action organization. We're talking about a related organization dedicated to taking the think tank's ideas and using political muscle as a 501c4 organization is intended to do. So whether you regret that or not, that's more than a passing distinction legally in the United States. Now, is it advisable? Well, indeed, if you're in the game of persuasion, it is advisable, but I say this with appropriate humility. All of you have to decide in your markets and in your communities, and our friends at Heritage have to decide for themselves as well, what's the most efficacious way for them to be as relevant as possible in today's idea and competition of ideas, which, and all of us share the motto that the competition of ideas is fundamental to a free society. It's not good for AEI and the Manhattan Institute to do that. And I would submit there are reasons for that you decide for yourself what's the best path to take for you.
Just one final point on that. I don't know what your environment is, but one of the reasons why it's also just practical to do it that way is that politicians are generally lagging indicators. Margaret Thatcher's and Rudy Giuliani's are rare. We have a politician who's committed to ideas, has the courage to back them up and do it. I think Arthur probably had the same experience I had. You'll go to talk to a congressman or senator, and I totally agree with you, but the political reality that I'm operating in, I can't say. So, what you try to do is change the general framework of public opinion. And that's create a comfortable space for these politicians to talk about these issues. Because the reality is, a lot of them get it, but their job is to get reelected. And, we're not there to help them do that. We're there to create an environment where good ideas become popular ideas.
John, please comment.
Please.
I agree with you in principle that we should not be engaged in political activity. But when I talk to a few of the friends in political parties, both sides of the aisle, usually they advise me that you should associate yourself with one single party. The logic being that at least once in 5 years, you'll be insider as opposed to being outsider forever. So that's sort of another way of thinking about the association with political parties.
Okay, let's move along here. A couple of related questions, maybe Marty could lead on. Marty, how do you keep top talent And related to that, we libertarians tend not to like being told to do things. Does this character trait pose challenges to managing individualistic employees?
Well, on the latter question, I suppose that libertarian organizations don't have it any harder than any other organization, because all human beings don't like to be told what to do, right? And I've always resisted thinking about libertarianism as a holistic philosophy that covers everything. It's a philosophy of what government, of what the social order should be, how that should be arranged. But there are some underlying values that come into our lives, and if those values, and our underlying values are to respect individuals. And so then you want to try to arrange your workplace so that people have as much scope to exercise their own capabilities as possible. And that's your goal, running an organization. I found the larger our organization has gotten, the more challenging that it is to effect in practice. It's an ongoing struggle, if you will, to arrange your workplace and your management structure in such a way that people do have decision rights that accord with their level of capability and so on. So, and getting that right, I think speaks to the first question as well. Retaining top talent in the movement is hard, and it depends on what area you're in. So people who are capable in fundraising, for example, are in high demand. And so, you know, I know there are those of you in this room who are trying to steal some of my investments. And I've tried to steal some of yours too. You know, there's a lot of competition for top talent, but it depends on what area you're in. When I was at Reason, we hired an art director, and we hired a new art director, and the junior editors found out what we were paying the art director, and we're just appalled. How could you pay that much more than we're being paid? You know, and it's, well, there's a market out there, and art directors, you have to pay more. And editors, all I have to do is go like this, and somebody wants to be an editor at Reason magazine, right? So there is a market out there, and we're competing with that. Retaining top talent is one of our big challenges, and I'm sure that this would be true across these organizations and the organizations that you represent. There's competition within the movement, and there's competition from the world out there. People with good capabilities may be able to make more money, for example, if they go outside the movement and work there. And you know, those are decisions that individuals have to make.